A lot of individuals are very curious how I went from being at the very bottom of the totem pole to rising astronomically. Considering where I started, I have surpassed where most people have already gotten. And that's because of the law of probability, the law of averages. Think about this. If someone is going to the gym for 4 years, they are already going to be further along than someone who just begins. The muscles you gain, the strength you gain in the first few months is going to be astronomically higher than the strength you gain once you've consistently been exercising, whether it's strength, cardio, so on and so forth. If you start off being 300 pounds, you exercise, you diet, you do everything you need to do in order to reach your end goal, you will reach astronomical results. While someone who is in decent shape will gain muscle, but their results will not automatically look better than yours, simply because you had a further way to go. Therefore, you're going to gain more to get to the average. I think life is like that too. But before we get into that, let me give you the definition of the law of averages, probability as some of you might call it, a real life example, and then a formula that I have used in my own personal life to go from being a bum to a decently successful individual, making multiple streams of income. I went from unemployed to multiple streams of income. What does the phrase the law of averages actually mean? It's the principle that supposes most future events are likely to balance any past deviation from a presumed average. Basically, if you put this in layman's terms, it's a belief that outcomes of a random event will even out within a small sample. Let me give you a real life example that is emblematic of what I am saying. The Tennessee football team lost a game in 2018 when it had a 99.6% probability to win it. Specifically, this game was against BYU. Tennessee was leading by 3 points. BYU had the ball in their own end zone with less than a minute left. In that situation, Tennessee had a 99.6% chance of getting the victory. But a missed assignment, a long pass later, and then a field goal to tie it led to overtime, where Tennessee ultimately lost that game. Fast forward to the bowl game, January 2nd, 2019, the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl. Tennessee rallied from 13 points down inside the final 5 minutes. To put that into perspective, 472 teams were in that same position this past season. And out of those 472 teams, 471 of them lost the game. Tennessee being the only winner. So they had a 1 in 471 chance and beat the odds. Basically, the average averaged itself out in the final outcome. And life is the same way. If you start off very low on the totem pole, you will see massive gains if you put in the work, simply because the law of probability will average itself out. And that's why one poor performance is not reflective of an individual situation, so on and so forth. Now, how do you get to an average? The way you do that is if you do something enough, a ratio will appear. Think of basketball free throw shooting, for instance. If you shoot free throws every day, you can figure out an average of how much you make, and then a percentage. Based upon that percentage, over a period of time, you can improve at it, but at the same time, it'll average itself out. Now the question is, what is a adequate, satisfactory average if you want to be successful? Well, if you talk to people and you only get 3 to say yes, that would be the equivalent of a 300 average in the major leagues. If you are able to be a 300 batter, you get paid at least $4 million, if not more. To put that into perspective, if you bat 300, it means you are out 7 out of 10 times. So if you asked 10 girls out, and 3 said yes, and I'm just using this as an example, don't go doing this. If you're a loyal man, do it at your own discretion, of course. Then you are batting 300. But you got to start off batting 0%. The more you're in the cage, the better your muscle memory is going to form, your mind and your muscles. The better you are going to get. The more confident, the more poised, psychologically, physically, so on and so forth. So as you start off 0, eventually as you improve, you will get to 300. And if you can get to 300 as an average person, you will be living to your physical capacity. That's why if you are an average person, if your genetic capacity is to be average or a bit above average, but for whatever reason, whether it's lack of opportunity, lack of connections, lack of drive, laziness, whatever it is, combination, then you all of a sudden, the green light clicks on, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, you will see astronomical gains, and then you will get to the average position that you were supposed to be at. And that's sort of what happened to me. Once I found a way to get to where I wanted to be, and I'm not there yet 100%, but I went from at the very bottom to being more successful than individuals who have worked longer than me, simply because I looked at the 300 batting average, and the law of average averaged itself out. If you have one bad performance, it doesn't mean you're terrible. It just means you had a bad performance.